There comes a point in a man's life when he begins to understand that not everything needs to be announced, not every thought needs to be explained, and not every ambition needs to be placed in front of the world before it has been earned in private. At first, this feels strange because the world teaches you to be loud. It teaches you to speak before you are ready, to display before you have built anything, to share the dream before you have developed the strength required to carry it. Everywhere you look, people are performing a version of progress. They are talking about what they are going to do, showing people the person they are trying to become, asking for recognition before the work has had time to shape them. And because everyone is making noise, silence begins to look like weakness. But silence is not weakness. Silence is the beginning of control. It is the moment when you stop leaking your energy into every room that wants a piece of you. It is the moment when you no longer need to convince people that you are changing because you have finally become serious enough to change without being seen. It is the decision to stop giving your future away through words and start protecting it through discipline. There is a kind of rebellion in this, not the loud kind, not the kind that needs attention, applause, or dramatic gestures. It is a quiet rebellion, the kind that happens when you wake up and realize that your life has been weakened by too much explanation, too much reaction, too much desire to be understood by people who are not building what you are building. The quiet person is often underestimated because he does not make the room uncomfortable with his ambition. He does not try to dominate conversations. He does not tell everyone what he is planning. He does not rush to defend himself every time someone misunderstands him. He does not waste precious mental strength trying to correct every opinion, answer every criticism, or prove every point. He learns something most people never learn, that power does not always need to speak. Sometimes power is the ability to stay still when your ego wants to move. Sometimes power is the ability to remain silent when your pride wants to explain. Sometimes power is the ability to keep working when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when no one is impressed, and when no one has any idea how much you are actually changing. This is where quiet discipline begins, not in the dramatic moments, not in the moments when music is loud and motivation is high, not when you feel inspired and the whole future seems clear, but in the ordinary, private, unseen moments when you do what needs to be done without needing the feeling to be perfect. Because motivation is loud, it arrives with emotion, it makes promises, it fills your mind with images of the person you could become. It gives you a rush, and for a moment that rush feels like transformation. But then the feeling fades, the day becomes ordinary again, the work becomes repetitive again, and the mind begins searching for a way out. Discipline is different. Discipline is quieter. It does not ask whether you feel ready. It does not need the room to understand. It does not wait for the right mood, the right weather, the right energy, or the right version of yourself. Discipline simply returns to the task. It returns to the page. It returns to the gym. It returns to the work. It returns to the promise you made when nobody was listening. That is why quiet discipline is dangerous. Not dangerous to other people, but dangerous to the old version of you. Dangerous to your excuses. Dangerous to your addiction to comfort. Dangerous to the part of your mind that wants progress without pressure, reward without repetition, identity without evidence. Every day you act in silence, you are casting a vote for a new identity. You are telling yourself, not through words, but through action, that you are no longer the person who needs to be pushed by emotion. You are no longer the person who has to announce the plan in order to feel like progress has begun. You are no longer the person who needs outside attention to make the work feel real. You are becoming the kind of person who can work in the dark. And the person who can work in the dark becomes very difficult to defeat, because when you stop announcing everything, you stop wasting the energy that should have gone into execution. You stop confusing the pleasure of being admired with the reality of being improved. You stop taking the cheap reward of being congratulated for something you have not yet finished. You stop letting other people's opinions enter the sacred space where your future is still being formed. This is one of the hidden advantages of privacy. When you keep your goals private, they remain alive inside you. They still create pressure. They still demand action. They still remind you that nothing has been proven yet. But when you speak too early, when you tell everyone what you are about to become, part of the mind relaxes. It receives a small reward before the work has been completed. The dream becomes socially real before it becomes physically real, and that can become dangerous because the mind can mistake talking for doing. It can mistake applause for achievement. It can mistake being seen as committed for actually being committed. And that is why the quiet path is often stronger. The quiet path keeps the pressure where it belongs. It keeps the promise inside your chest. It forces you to earn the right to speak through results. It teaches you to become before you announce. It teaches you that your transformation does not need witnesses in order to be valid. There is a deep strength in building without telling everyone what you are building. There is a deep strength in becoming more focused without explaining why. There is a deep strength in letting people believe you are the same, while quietly removing the habits, distractions, and weaknesses that once controlled you. At first, nobody notices. And that is good, because when nobody notices, nobody interferes. When nobody notices, nobody gives you shallow praise that weakens the hunger. When nobody notices, nobody challenges the new identity before it has roots. You get to build quietly. You get to fail quietly. You get to correct quietly. You get to develop strength without the pressure of performing strength. This is where most people lose themselves. They want to be seen becoming strong more than they want to become strong. They want the identity before the evidence. They want the world to reflect back a version of them they have not yet earned. So they talk, they post, they explain, they announce, they gather attention around a future they have not built. But quiet discipline does the opposite. It removes the performance, it removes the audience, it removes the noise. And once the noise is gone, you are left with the only question that matters. Are you actually willing to do the work? Not talk about the work, not imagine the work, not prepare forever for the work, not explain to people how serious you are about the work, but actually sit down, close the door, remove the distraction, and enter the long silent hours where your future is shaped. This is where deep work begins. Deep work is not glamorous. It is often lonely. It is often repetitive. It does not give you constant emotional rewards. It does not always feel exciting while it is happening, but it is one of the few places where a person can still become rare. In a world where attention is being pulled apart by endless noise, the ability to focus without interruption becomes a form of power. Most people cannot stay with one thing anymore. Their mind has been trained to escape. The moment the work becomes difficult, they reach for the phone. The moment silence becomes uncomfortable, they look for stimulation. The moment they feel friction, they search for relief. And every time they do this, they teach the mind that discomfort is something to run from. But the quiet, disciplined person trains differently. He does not treat discomfort as a signal to escape. He treats it as the entrance. He understands that the work only begins to change him when it stops entertaining him. He understands that focus is not just a productivity tool, but a form of self-respect. He understands that every time he chooses the hard task over the easy distraction, he is strengthening the part of himself that must lead. This is why silence matters. Silence gives you space to hear the excuses before you obey them. Silence gives you enough distance from your impulses to see them clearly. Silence allows you to notice when you are about to abandon the work, not because the work is wrong, but because the old self is frightened by the pressure of becoming new. The world will not give you this silence. You have to create it. You have to protect it. You have to become almost ruthless about what you allow into your mind, because your attention is not unlimited. Every argument you enter, every useless opinion you chase, every digital distraction you feed, every emotional reaction you indulge, takes something from the work you say, matters most. A person does not fall apart all at once. He usually falls apart through tiny leaks of attention. A little scrolling, a little complaining, a little reacting, a little explaining, a little comparing, a little worrying about people who are not even thinking deeply about him. And by the time he sits down to build his life, the strongest part of his mind has already been spent on nothing. Quiet discipline closes those leaks. It says, not every battle deserves my energy. Not every opinion deserves my response. Not every person deserves access to my plan. Not every impulse deserves obedience. Not every emotion deserves control over my day. This is not coldness. This is not arrogance. This is not pretending to be above the world. It is simply the understanding that a life is built with energy, and energy must be guarded. A person who cannot guard his energy cannot guard his future. There will be times when people misunderstand your silence. They may think you have given up. They may think you have nothing to say. They may think you are not moving because they cannot see the movement happening beneath the surface. Let them think that. Let them underestimate you. There is freedom in being underestimated, because when people stop watching closely, you can work without resistance. You do not need to correct the image they have of you. You do not need to tell them that you are changing. You do not need to explain why you have become less available, less reactive, less interested in noise, less willing to spend your life proving yourself in conversations that do not move you forward. The work will explain you later. For now, your responsibility is to remain faithful to the process. Wake up and do the small thing, then do it again tomorrow. Build the habit so quietly that it becomes part of your identity before anyone has a chance to praise it. Read when you said you would read. Train when you said you would train. Work when you said you would work. Practice when nobody sees the practice. Study when nobody rewards the studying. Return to the task after a bad day. Return to the task after a missed day. Return to the task when the mind says it does not matter, because it does matter. The small things are not small when they are repeated long enough. They become evidence, and evidence becomes identity. Every quiet repetition tells your mind, this is who we are now. Every private act of discipline creates a deeper belief, not the fragile belief that comes from positive thinking, but the strong belief that comes from proof. You do not become disciplined because you say you are disciplined. You become disciplined because you keep promises when there is no audience. That is the difference between image and identity. Image needs attention. Identity needs evidence. Image wants to be seen immediately. Identity is willing to be formed slowly. Image is loud because it is insecure. Identity can be quiet because it has nothing to prove. And this is why your quiet discipline becomes your greatest weapon. It changes the battlefield. You are no longer fighting people. You are no longer fighting opinions. You are no longer fighting for attention. You are fighting the only battle that actually determines your future, the battle between the old self and the self you are trying to build. The old self will not disappear just because you are inspired. It will return through comfort. It will return through distraction. It will return through the need to be praised. It will return through the desire to explain yourself. It will return through the temptation to speak too soon And every time it returns, silence gives you a moment to choose. That moment is everything. In that moment, you can react or you can redirect, you can speak or you can build, you can chase approval or you can return to the work. You can announce the future or you can earn it. You can become another person addicted to noise, or you can become the rare person who knows how to move without being seen. Do not underestimate the power of moving without being seen. The seed does not make noise under the soil. The foundation does not ask for applause before the building rises. The roots do not explain themselves to the branches. The deepest work is often invisible at first, because invisible work is what makes visible success possible. So let the world be loud. Let people perform. Let them explain everything they are about to do. Let them chase the feeling of progress. Let them confuse attention with achievement. You choose something different. Choose the quiet room. Choose the early hour. Choose the difficult repetition. Choose the private standard. Choose the calm face. Choose the closed mouth. Choose the focused mind. Choose the discipline that does not need to be seen in order to be real. And when the pressure rises, stay with it. When the urge to announce appears, hold it inside and turn it into action. When the urge to react appears, hold your position and keep your peace. When the work becomes boring, continue. When the results are slow, continue. When nobody notices, continue. Because the longer you can continue without applause, the more dangerous your discipline becomes. One day the results will surface, not because you forced people to notice, but because quiet consistency eventually becomes impossible to ignore. The body changes, the mind changes, the work improves, the standards rise, the old weaknesses lose their grip. The person who once needed to be seen slowly becomes the person whose presence is felt without effort. And when that day comes, you will understand why silence was never empty. It was where you were gathering yourself. It was where you were protecting your energy. It was where you were becoming someone who no longer needed noise to feel powerful. The silent rebellion is not against the world. It is against the part of you that needed the world's permission. It is against the part of you that talked more than it built. It is against the part of you that wanted recognition before transformation. It is against the part of you that confused being understood with being strong. From this point forward, build differently. Do not announce the war before you have built the army. Do not explain the vision before you have developed the discipline to carry it. Do not waste your strength trying to look serious. Become serious. Become quiet. Become consistent. And let the life you build in silence become louder than anything you could have ever said.
Imagine for a moment that the life you have been trying so hard to reach is not as far away as you were taught to believe. Imagine that the peace you have been chasing, the confidence you have been waiting for, the success you have been praying to become worthy of, is not hidden somewhere in the future, but is waiting to be recognized in the silent place within you where all creation begins. Not in the noise of the world, not in the approval of others, not in another method, another ritual, another secret technique, but in the simple, direct recognition of your own inner state. Most people never see this because they have been trained to distrust what is simple. They believe that if something is powerful, it must be difficult. If something is true, it must be complicated. If something can transform their life, it must demand years of struggle, endless effort, and constant pressure. So they search. They read more. They watch more. They try more. They build system after system around the very thing that was never hidden from them in the first place. And yet, the secret is not that life is withholding something from you. The secret is that you keep looking past what is already present. There is a place within you where your reality is first accepted before it is ever seen. There is a quiet center inside your consciousness where every assumption takes root, where every identity is formed, where every future begins as an inner fact before it becomes an outer experience. And the moment you understand this, you stop treating transformation as something that must be forced from the outside, and you begin to see that all true change begins with the state you are willing to occupy within. This is why the simple path is ignored. Not because it is weak, not because it is shallow, not because it is less powerful than effort. It is ignored because it gives the mind nothing to hide behind. The mind loves complexity because complexity allows delay. Complexity gives you a reason to say, I am not ready yet. I need more time. I need more knowledge. I need more healing. I need one more technique before I can finally become the person I desire to be. And in this endless preparation, the mind keeps the desired life at a safe distance. It keeps the fulfilled state in the future, where it can be admired, imagined, and postponed, but never fully lived. But the direct path does not ask you to postpone your power. It asks you to notice it now. It asks you to stop asking the outside world for permission to become what you have already accepted within. It asks you to stop treating your desired state as something you must chase, and to begin treating it as something you must inhabit. Because the world does not respond merely to what you want. It responds to what you consistently assume yourself to be. If you assume distance, life will show you distance. If you assume lack, life will echo lack. If you assume that success is far away, that peace is difficult, that confidence must be earned through suffering, then every step you take will carry the energy of separation. You may work hard. You may discipline yourself. You may force your body into action. But beneath the action, there will still be a silent confession that says, I am not there yet. And life reflects that confession. This is why conscious noticing is so powerful, because noticing is the moment you awaken from the assumption you have been living under. It is the moment you see the thought before it becomes your identity. It is the moment you see the fear before it becomes your decision. It is the moment you see the old self trying to return, and instead of fighting it, obeying it, or calling it truth, you simply recognize it as a passing movement in consciousness. You notice, and in that noticing, you are free. Not because the thought disappears instantly, not because the fear never comes back, not because the old pattern vanishes forever in one dramatic moment, but because the moment you notice it, you are no longer completely inside it. You are no longer sleeping beneath its command. You are no longer unconsciously giving your authority to a voice that was never your highest truth. This is the great shift. You move from being the thought to witnessing the thought. You move from being ruled by the emotion to recognizing the emotion. You move from living inside the old assumption to seeing that the assumption can be changed. And once you see that, everything begins to open. Most people try to change their lives by attacking the surface. They try to force new results while carrying the same inner state. They try to build success while still assuming failure. They try to create love while still assuming rejection. They try to attract peace while still identifying with chaos. They try to become disciplined while still seeing themselves as someone who cannot be trusted. And then they wonder why the outer world does not change. But the outer world is not the beginning. It is the reflection. The beginning is the state you occupy when no one is watching. The beginning is the inner conversation you return to when the room is quiet. The beginning is what you assume to be true about yourself before the evidence arrives. And until that state changes, your actions will often become nothing more than old fear wearing the clothing of ambition. This is why effort alone is not enough. Effort matters. Discipline matters. Action matters. But action taken from the wrong state becomes exhausting. It carries desperation. It carries tension. It carries the belief that you are trying to become worthy by force. And whatever is done from that state often produces more struggle, because beneath the movement, there is still a feeling of lack. But when the state changes, action changes. When you begin to live from the fulfilled state, your discipline is no longer punishment. It becomes loyalty. You are no longer forcing yourself to become someone valuable. You are acting in harmony with the value you have already accepted. You are no longer working because you feel empty. You are working because your inner world has already declared who you are, and now your outer life must become obedient to that declaration. That is real self-improvement, not self-hatred, not endless pressure, not the violent rejection of who you are. Real self-improvement is the sacred discipline of no longer betraying the person you have recognized yourself to be. If you have recognized that you are capable of focus, then you cannot continue living as a servant of distraction. If you have recognized that your future requires strength, then you cannot keep returning to habits that weaken you and call it comfort. If you have recognized that you are no longer the old version of yourself, then your actions must begin to reflect the new assumption. This is not pretending. Pretending is when you act on the surface while doubting in your heart. Embodiment is when you accept something inwardly so deeply that your behavior naturally begins to follow. There is a vast difference. When you pretend, you are still trying to convince the world. When you embody, you no longer need the world to be convinced first. You move from the inner knowing. You walk differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. Not because you are performing, but because you have entered a new state, and that state has begun to organize your life from within. Ask yourself now, what have you been assuming about yourself in silence when no one is there to encourage you? What do you quietly believe about your future? When the evidence has not yet appeared, what do you accept as true about your worth? When a door closes, do you assume rejection, or do you assume redirection? When progress is slow, do you assume failure, or do you assume that life is still arranging itself according to the state you have chosen? These silent assumptions are not small. They are creative. They form the atmosphere you carry into every room. They shape how you interpret delay, how you respond to difficulty, how you use your energy, how you speak to yourself, and how long you remain loyal to a vision before the world confirms it. The person who assumes defeat sees every obstacle as proof. The person who assumes alignment sees every obstacle as movement. The outer event may be the same, but the state that receives it is different. And because the state is different, the future that grows from it is different. This is why the simple path is not passive. It is not sitting still while your life falls apart. It is not refusing action. It is not calling laziness spirituality. It is not using awareness as an excuse to avoid responsibility. The simple path is the removal of unnecessary inner struggle, so that action can become clear, clean, and powerful. When you no longer act from panic, your action becomes precise. When you no longer act from lack, your action becomes magnetic. When you no longer act from the old identity, your action becomes a confirmation of the new one. And this is where many people misunderstand effortless. Effortless does not mean there is no work. It means there is no inner contradiction. It means your thoughts, your emotions, your assumptions, your choices, and your actions are no longer moving in different directions. It means you are not asking for success while preparing for failure. You are not praying for peace while rehearsing chaos. You are not desiring freedom while continuing to identify with the prison. Your being becomes one statement, one direction, one inner yes. And when your inner world becomes unified, life begins to respond in a way that looks effortless to others. But you will know what really happened. You stopped contradicting yourself. You stopped feeding the old state. You stopped trying to become from a place of lack, and you began to live from the place where it was already done. This is what it means to collapse the gap. Most people believe there is a long distance between desire and fulfillment. They say, I am here, and what I want is there. Then they fill that distance with anxiety, overthinking, comparison, and time. They imagine the fulfilled life as something they must reach after enough effort, enough proof, enough signs, enough permission. But what if the gap is not real in the way you think it is? What if the gap is held together by attention? What if the more you stare at the distance, the more distance you create? To live from the end is not to deny the present. It is to stop worshiping the present as final. It is to understand that your current circumstances are not the law. They are only the echo of previous states, previous beliefs, previous assumptions that have hardened into visible form. And if they were formed by consciousness before, they can be transformed by consciousness now. So you do not wait for evidence before you change your state. You change your state, and the evidence follows. This is the order most people reverse. They say, when I see it, I will believe it. When I receive it, I will feel thankful. When I become successful, I will walk with confidence. When life gives me proof, I will finally rest. But the direct path says something different. Rest now. Assume now. Notice now. Become inwardly loyal now. Because the unseen always precedes the seen. A building exists first in the imagination of the architect, before it rises into the skyline. A tree exists first as a hidden seed before it breaks through the soil. A new identity exists first as an inner acceptance before it becomes visible through habits, posture, speech, decisions, and results. You do not wait for the world to make you new. You become new within, and then you allow your life to catch up. This does not mean the doubt will never appear. It will. The old story will return. The old habit will ask to be obeyed. The old emotion will come with its familiar weight. But when it appears, you no longer need to panic. You no longer need to call it failure. You only need to notice it. Notice the fear. Notice the craving. Notice the impulse to shrink. Notice the thought that says, this is not working. And then remember who is noticing. The one who notices is not trapped in the old state. The one who notices is already standing in a deeper place. From that place, you can choose. From that place, you can return. From that place, you can act without becoming a servant of the fear. This is spiritual discipline, not the discipline of forcing yourself to believe something while secretly expecting the opposite, but the discipline of returning to the state you have chosen again and again until it becomes natural. The discipline of guarding your inner world. The discipline of refusing to rehearse old limitations as if they were sacred truth. The discipline of no longer giving your attention to every thought that weakens your future. Because attention is creative. Where your attention goes, your identity begins to gather around it. If you give your attention to lack, lack becomes familiar. If you give your attention to fear, fear becomes convincing. If you give your attention to the old version of yourself, the old version begins to feel like destiny. But if you give your attention to the fulfilled state, if you dwell there, return there, breathe there, and make decisions from there, then that state begins to feel natural. And what feels natural to you becomes your reality. This is why you must be careful with the inner conversations you allow. Many people guard their possessions more carefully than they guard their assumptions. They protect their phones, their money, their reputation, their image. But they allow any thought to enter the temple of consciousness and declare itself law. Do not do this. Stand guard over the inner world, not with tension, not with fear, not with the anxious need to control every thought, but with quiet authority. When a thought appears that does not belong to your chosen state, notice it and release your identification from it. Do not fight it for hours. Do not build a story around it. Do not ask it to explain itself. Simply see it for what it is. A passing movement, not your destiny, not your identity, not your command. And then return to the assumption that you have chosen. Return to the feeling of completion. Return to the inner atmosphere of the person who knows that life is unfolding in their favor. Return to the quiet certainty that what you seek is not separate from you. Return to the understanding that your future is not created by panic, but by state, by belief, by attention, by aligned action, repeated until the outer world must reflect the inner truth. This is how you live the direct path. You do not need to make it dramatic. You do not need to announce it to everyone. You do not need to turn it into a performance. The deepest shifts often happen in silence. They happen when you are alone and you decide not to believe the old story again. They happen when no one is watching and you choose the higher action. They happen when you feel the pull of the old habit and quietly say, "That is not who I am anymore." That one moment may look small from the outside, but in consciousness, it is enormous. Because every time you refuse to obey the old assumption, you weaken it. Every time you act from the new state, you strengthen it. Every time you return to the fulfilled inner reality, you make it more natural. And slowly, then suddenly, the outer world begins to rearrange around the person you have become within. People may call it luck. They may call it timing. They may say you changed. But you will know the truth. You stopped living as a contradiction. You stopped asking life to give you proof before you became faithful. You stopped postponing the state you desired. You stopped treating yourself as someone waiting outside the door of your own future. You entered the state. You lived from it. You acted from it. You protected it. And life, being the mirror that it is, began to show you the evidence of what you had already accepted in silence. So begin now, not tomorrow, Not when you feel perfect, not when all doubt disappears, not when the world finally gives you a sign. Begin in this moment. Take a breath and notice the state you are in. Notice the assumptions moving beneath your thoughts. Notice whether you are living from fear or from faith, from lack or from completion, from the old identity or from the fulfilled self. And if you see that you have been living from the old state, do not condemn yourself. Condemnation only feeds the very identity you are leaving behind. Simply choose again. Enter the inner state of the person who already knows. How does that person breathe? How does that person walk? How does that person speak to themselves when no one is listening? How does that person respond to delay? How does that person handle temptation? How does that person work when the results are not yet visible? Become familiar with that state. Not as a fantasy, not as a temporary emotion, but as your new inner home. Then let your actions follow. Do the work from that place. Keep the promise from that place. Protect your focus from that place. Build your future from that place. Let your discipline be the physical expression of your inner assumption. Let your habits become the proof that you are no longer waiting to become someone else. You are living from the end. You are no longer chasing the state. You are carrying it. You are no longer begging the world to change first. You are changing the source from which your world is reflected. And as you do this, remember that the simple path will always be rejected by the restless mind. The mind will ask for something more complicated. It will say, "There must be another secret. There must be another technique. There must be something else I need before I can begin." But the truth does not become more powerful by becoming more complicated. The truth is powerful because it is direct. Notice, assume, embody, act, return. That is the path. Notice the old state, assume the fulfilled one. Embody it until it becomes natural. Act from it with quiet discipline. Return to it whenever the world tries to pull you back into appearances. This is not weak. This is mastery. Because the one who can hold their inner state before the evidence appears is the one who understands creation. The one who can act from fulfillment before the world applauds is the one who is no longer controlled by circumstances. The one who can notice fear without becoming fear has already begun to transcend the old life. So stop ignoring what is simple. Stop making your transformation so complicated that you never have to live it. Stop waiting for another method to give you permission to become what your awareness can recognize right now. The path is here. It has always been here. Beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the endless search for proof, beneath the old assumptions you mistook for truth. It is the quiet place within you that already knows. And when you live from that place, when you return to it again and again, when you let your choices, your discipline, your attention, and your identity become loyal to it, your life cannot remain the same. Because the world must eventually reflect the state you refuse to abandon. And the moment you understand this, you will no longer ask whether the path is working. You will know. You will feel it in your posture. You will hear it in your inner voice. You will see it in the choices you no longer make. You will recognize it in the peace that no longer depends on proof. You will sense it in the way life begins to meet you differently. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. And once you become it within, the outer world is only catching up. There is a strange comfort in staying exactly where you are, even when the place you are standing in is slowly destroying you. Most people do not remain stuck because they love their current life. They remain stuck because the familiar pain feels safer than the unfamiliar pressure of change. They know what their excuses feel like. They know what their routine feels like. They know the emotional temperature of the life they keep repeating. And because the nervous system prefers what is familiar, even a painful pattern can begin to feel like home. That is the real danger of the comfort trap. It rarely announces itself as weakness. It does not always look like laziness or failure. Sometimes it looks reasonable. Sometimes it sounds like rest. Sometimes it disguises itself as timing, preparation, self-care, or waiting for the right moment. A person can spend years telling himself he is getting ready, when the truth is that he is avoiding the moment where he has to prove who he really is. He keeps planning because planning feels safer than action. He keeps researching because researching feels safer than execution. He keeps imagining the future because imagination does not expose him the way reality does. Action is dangerous to the ego because action tells the truth. It reveals whether your standards are real or only decorative. It reveals whether your discipline exists outside your imagination. It reveals whether the person you claim you want to become is actually being built in your daily life. And that is why so many people quietly retreat back into comfort. They do not fear failure as much as they fear being exposed. Failure can be explained away. Exposure is harder to escape because once you see yourself clearly, you can no longer pretend you do not know. The comfort zone is not protecting you. It is preventing you. It keeps you small and calls it safety. It tells you to wait a little longer, to recover a little more, to avoid the pressure one more day. And because it sounds calm, because it sounds logical, because it speaks in the voice of familiarity, you believe it. But what you call safety may only be fear that has learned how to sound intelligent. The truth is that many people do not have a discipline problem. They have a discomfort problem. They are disciplined, but in the wrong direction. They are disciplined at scrolling, disciplined at delaying, disciplined at choosing relief, disciplined at returning to the same habits that keep them disappointed in themselves. Discipline is not absent. It is simply misdirected. The human being is always practicing something. The question is whether the thing being practiced is building the future or protecting the past. A person who says he cannot be consistent is often very consistent at avoiding the thing that matters. A person who says he has no focus can focus for hours on whatever gives him easy stimulation. A person who says he lacks commitment may have spent years committed to the same excuses. So the issue is not always capacity. Sometimes the capacity is there, but it has been trained in the wrong direction. The task is not to create discipline from nothing. The task is to reclaim the discipline that has been serving comfort and point it toward growth. But this is where the deeper battle begins. Because the moment you try to change, your body may not celebrate. Your mind may understand the goal, but your nervous system may treat the goal like a threat. This is why change often feels strangely dangerous. You are not merely choosing a new habit. You are challenging an old identity. You are stepping outside the emotional environment your body has learned to survive in. And when the body senses unfamiliarity, it often responds with resistance. That resistance can look like fatigue. It can look like anxiety. It can look like irritation, doubt, procrastination, or a sudden desire to do anything except the one thing you promised yourself you would do. And if you do not understand what is happening, you will assume the resistance is a sign that you should stop. You will think, maybe I am not ready. Maybe this is too much. Maybe I need to wait. But resistance is not always a signal to stop. Sometimes resistance is simply the old self defending its territory. The old self does not disappear politely. It does not step aside just because you watched a motivational video or wrote down a new goal. It fights to remain in control. It wants familiar emotions, familiar excuses, familiar escape routes. It wants the same life because the same life requires less energy. And because the brain is designed to conserve energy and avoid uncertainty, your old patterns will often feel easier, even when they are ruining you. This is why self-sabotage is so powerful. It is not always a conscious choice to destroy your progress. Sometimes self-sabotage is the nervous system choosing familiarity over expansion. It is the body saying, I know this pain, but I do not know that future. I know this disappointment, but I do not know that responsibility. I know this level of pressure, but I do not know what will happen if we rise. So it pulls you back, not because the future is wrong, but because the future is unfamiliar. And under pressure, this pull becomes stronger. When stress rises, the brain begins to shift. The amygdala, the threat detector, becomes louder. It is fast, reactive, emotional, and built for survival. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, judgment, impulse control, and long-term thinking, becomes harder to access. This is why people who are intelligent can make foolish decisions under pressure. It is not that they suddenly became stupid. It is that their nervous system changed the state from which they were making decisions. In a calm state, you know what matters. You know the plan. You know the long-term cost of your bad habits. You know the kind of person you are trying to become. But in a stressed state, your thinking narrows. Your body looks for relief. The fastest escape begins to look like wisdom. The emotional brain says, end this discomfort now. And if you obey it, you may make a decision that gives you peace for 10 minutes and consequences for 10 months. That is why some choices take so long to recover from. Not because you did not know better, but because you decided from a temporary state. You were tired, so you quit. You were triggered, so you spoke. You were overwhelmed, so you ran. You were bored, so you escaped. You were anxious, so you chose comfort. Then the pressure passed, the emotion faded, the body returned to normal, but the consequence remained. A mature person learns not to make permanent decisions from temporary states. If you are exhausted, you wait. If you are emotionally flooded, you pause. If your body is demanding immediate relief, you slow down before you trust the demand. Your best decisions do not come from panic. They come from perspective. And perspective returns when regulation returns. This is why emotional regulation is not a soft skill. It is one of the highest forms of power. It is the ability to keep the thinking brain online while the body is under pressure. It is the ability to feel fear without allowing fear to write the plan. It is the ability to feel anger without handing anger the microphone. It is the ability to feel discomfort without immediately betraying the future to escape the present. Emotional mastery is not the absence of emotion. It is coherence in the presence of emotion. A person who never feels pressure is not strong. He is untested. A person who can feel pressure and still choose clearly is becoming dangerous in the best way. He is no longer controlled by the first feeling that hits him. He has created space between stimulus and response. And in that space, he has begun to build a new identity. Most people never enter that space. They react so quickly that they believe the reaction is who they are. But many reactions are not identity. They are conditioning. The trigger appears, and the body performs the old script. Someone criticizes you, and you defend yourself. A task feels hard, and you avoid it. A moment feels boring, and you reach for stimulation. Pressure rises, and you look for escape. The reaction feels natural because it has been repeated for so long, but natural does not mean free. Freedom begins when you can observe the reaction before obeying it. When anger rises and you can name it, you are no longer completely inside it. When anxiety tightens your chest and you can notice it, you have already created distance. When the urge to escape appears and you can watch it without immediately moving, something powerful has happened. You have shifted from being the emotion to being the one who sees the emotion. And the one who can see can choose. This is why the body must be trained. You cannot think your way out of every storm. Sometimes the first step is physiological. Slow the breath. Lengthen the exhale. Let the body know that the pressure is not death. You are not being chased by a tiger. You are facing an uncomfortable task, a difficult conversation, a demanding goal, a moment of growth. The body may not know the difference at first, so you have to teach it. A double inhale followed by a long exhale can lower arousal quickly. Slow breathing can return control to the system. Grounding the body can bring attention back to the present. These tools are not magic, but they are practical. They give the mind a doorway back into control. Because when the body changes state, the mind gains access again. When panic loses intensity, judgment returns. When the nervous system steadies, the future becomes visible again. But regulation cannot only be something you try to do after life has already hit you. You have to rehearse it. You practice calm before the hard conversation. You practice breath before the workout. You practice focus before the deep work session. You practice returning to yourself before the pressure becomes overwhelming. Because you do not rise to the level of your wishes. You fall to the level of your training. This is why controlled discomfort matters. You do not build resilience by avoiding everything that activates you. You build resilience by meeting pressure in doses you can survive, regulate, and learn from. Hard training does this. Cold water does this. Deep work does this. Difficult conversations do this. Waking up early when your body wants comfort does this. None of these things are magic by themselves, but they give your nervous system evidence. They teach the body, I can feel discomfort and remain here. I can feel resistance and still act. I can be under pressure and not collapse. Every time you do the hard thing and survive it, your identity receives evidence. Every time you keep a promise when you do not feel like it, trust is restored. Every time you stay with a task after the old self begins negotiating, a small part of you becomes stronger. Confidence is not built by repeating affirmations. Confidence is built when the evidence of your behavior begins to prove that you can be trusted. This is how you outwork your former self. not through one dramatic act, but through repeated proof. The old version of you is not defeated by inspiration. It is defeated by pattern. If your pattern is avoidance, you become avoidant. If your pattern is distraction, you become distracted. If your pattern is discipline, you become disciplined. Identity follows repetition. So the real question is not simply, who do I want to become? The real question is, what am I repeatedly proving? And today, the modern world makes that question harder because it has trained your brain to expect reward without effort. Your phone gives novelty without patience. Short videos give stimulation without depth. Junk food gives pleasure without discipline. Notifications give attention without achievement. Over time, the brain begins to prefer high reward with low effort. And then, meaningful work starts to feel painfully slow. This is why many people believe they lack motivation when, in reality, they are overstimulated. Their brain has been trained to chase the easiest dopamine available. A book feels boring because it requires attention. A workout feels heavy because it requires effort before reward. Deep work feels uncomfortable because it does not give constant stimulation. Silence feels unbearable because the mind has forgotten how to be alone with itself. The solution is not to hate pleasure. The solution is to restore order. Effort first, reward later. Work before phone. Training before comfort. Focus before entertainment. Promise before pleasure. This simple order begins to repair the reward system. When the brain receives reward after effort, it begins attaching satisfaction to progress. The completed workout feels good. The finished task feels good. The clean room feels good. The kept promise feels good. Slowly, the brain remembers that effort is not punishment. Effort is the path back to self-respect. At first, the reset will feel uncomfortable. When you remove the easiest sources of stimulation, your body will complain. You may feel restless, bored, irritated, even empty. But that emptiness is not proof that something is wrong. It may be the sound of your attention returning from all the places where it has been scattered. Most people run back to stimulation the moment silence becomes uncomfortable. And that is why they never reset. They never let boredom do its work. They never discover that beneath the noise, there is a quieter motivation waiting to return. Replace cheap stimulation with slower rewards. Walk, read, train, write, clean your space, sit in silence, have real conversations, do work that does not immediately excite you, but strengthens your life. At first, these things may feel dull because your system is still calibrated for intensity. But after enough time, the simple things begin to feel alive again. A walk becomes peaceful. A book becomes engaging. A finished task becomes satisfying. Silence becomes control. This is not forced motivation. This is your sensitivity returning. And as this happens, discipline begins to change meaning. It no longer feels only like punishment or restriction. It becomes a form of protection. Discipline protects your future from your present impulses. Discipline protects your confidence from your inconsistency. Discipline protects your peace from your emotional reactions. Discipline protects the person you are becoming from the person you used to be. In its simplest form, discipline is the ability to prioritize future you over current comfort. Future you needs you to sleep on time. Future you needs you to train. Future you needs you to save your attention. Future you needs you to say no. Future you needs you to stop making decisions from temporary emotional states. When you understand this, discipline becomes less about force and more about service. You begin to live like you are serving the person you are becoming. This is why environment matters. You cannot expect your future self to win inside an environment built for your old self. If your phone is beside your bed, you will reach for it. If your workspace is chaotic, your attention will suffer. If your easiest habits are destructive, your willpower will eventually get tired. A serious person does not only depend on motivation. He designs his life so that the right action becomes easier and the wrong action becomes harder. Every barrier between you and distraction is a vote for the person you are becoming. But even with structure, pressure will come. Success comes with pressure. Growth comes with pressure. Responsibility comes with pressure. Every meaningful goal will eventually ask you to become larger than your current emotional capacity. This is why the goal is not to remove pressure from life. The goal is to stop interpreting pressure as a sign that something is wrong. Pressure is not always danger. Sometimes pressure means you are in the arena. It means something is being asked of you. It means there is responsibility on your shoulders. It means you are close enough to the edge of your current capacity that adaptation can begin. Your nervous system was not designed for endless comfort. It was designed for adaptation. When pressure rises, the body activates. Heart rate increases, focus sharpens, energy mobilizes. If you label that activation as threat, you may collapse. If you label it as challenge, you can perform. Same pressure, it matters. Muscles grow under tension. The brain rewires under challenge. Resilience forms under load. A life with no pressure may feel peaceful for a while, but it does not forge strength. You cannot become unshakable in a life organized around never being shaken. You become unshakable by meeting the thing that used to disturb you and staying with it a little longer each time. This does not mean you destroy yourself with stress. Too much pressure without recovery breaks the system. But too little pressure creates softness. The path is load and recovery, challenge and regulation, effort and repair. You expose yourself to enough pressure to grow, and then you recover enough to integrate the growth. That is how capacity expands without becoming burnout. A strong body supports this process because pressure appears in the body first. The chest tightens before the thoughts become clear. The breath changes before the mind explains why. The jaw locks, the hands clench, the stomach turns. If you do not know how to command the body, the mind becomes easier to hijack. Training the body is not vanity. It is armor. It teaches the mind to stay under load. It teaches the nervous system that discomfort can be survived. It teaches you that you are not as fragile as your avoidance once made you believe. The person who cannot command his own body will struggle to command his mind. This is not because the body is everything, but because the body is where pressure makes its first argument. If the body says run and you always run, the mind learns that pressure is stronger than purpose. But if the body says run and you breathe, stay, and act anyway, the mind learns something new. It learns that discomfort does not decide. You do. This is the beginning of leaving the old self behind. But leaving the old self is not romantic. It hurts. It creates grief. There is grief in realizing that the life you kept protecting no longer fits. There is grief in seeing that some habits you once called comfort were actually chains. There is grief in becoming someone your old environment may not recognize. And there is anxiety in becoming a person you have never been before. Still, the only thing worse than the discomfort of change is the pain of staying the same. Familiar does not mean free. Familiar does not mean aligned. Familiar does not mean alive. Sometimes the old version of you is just a prison you decorated because you were afraid to leave. If you want to become a new version of yourself, something old must go. The old excuses, the old distractions, the old emotional reactions, the old need for approval, the old habit of running when pressure rises. You cannot keep feeding the old identity and expect a new life to emerge. You cannot keep the old habits and expect a new self-image. You cannot keep choosing comfort and expect transformation. And some people will miss the old version of you. They will miss the version who stayed small. They will miss the version who had no boundaries. They will miss the version who needed their approval. They will miss the version who made their life easier, not better. Let them miss it. You are not here to remain convenient. You are here to become true. The old self will not disappear because you understand the science. It will disappear when you stop obeying it. Every time it asks for comfort, you choose the promise. Every time it asks for delay, you begin. Every time it asks for distraction, you return to the work. Every time it asks you to react, you breathe first. Every time it asks you to quit, you stay a little longer. That is how the old pattern dies. Not with hatred, but with repetition. Not with motivation, but with evidence. Not with one dramatic declaration, but with the quiet violence of kept promises. The new version of you is not waiting in comfort. It is waiting in the moment you usually avoid. It is waiting in the hard task, the early morning, the silent room after the phone is put away. It is waiting in the breath before the reaction, in the workout you did not feel like doing, in the decision to choose the future over the feeling. So stop treating pressure like a sign that you should retreat. Stop worshiping comfort as if it were safety. Stop letting temporary states make permanent decisions for your life. Breathe, regulate, observe, and move. Let discomfort become information. Let pressure become training. Let discipline become the language through which you tell your future self, "I have not forgotten you." Your former self is not defeated by words. It is defeated by repeated action. Outwork it until it loses its voice. Outlast it until it loses its power. Outgrow it until comfort no longer feels like home. Because comfort may feel safe today, but discipline is what makes you free tomorrow. There is a quiet moment in every life when a person begins to understand that comfort has not been protecting them. It has been weakening them slowly, almost invisibly, one easy choice at a time. At first, comfort feels like peace. It feels like safety. It feels like the reward you deserve after being tired, stressed, disappointed, or overwhelmed by life. So you tell yourself you will start tomorrow. You tell yourself that one missed workout does not matter. One wasted morning does not matter. One broken promise to yourself does not matter. One more hour of distraction does not matter. But the mind is always listening. The body is always learning. And every time you choose ease when you know you needed discipline, something inside you receives the message that your feelings are in charge. that pressure is stronger than your promise, and that the version of you who wants a better life is still not powerful enough to lead. This is how weakness is built, not in one dramatic collapse, but through hundreds of tiny negotiations with comfort. And this is also how strength is built, not through one heroic moment, not through one powerful speech, not through one burst of motivation that burns hot for a day and disappears by the next morning. Strength is built through ritual. It is built through repeated contact with difficulty. It is built every time you deliberately step into something you would rather avoid, not because you are trying to punish yourself, but because you are teaching your nervous system a new truth. You are teaching it that discomfort is not danger. You are teaching it that pressure is not the end. You are teaching it that your mind can remain calm even when your body wants to retreat. This is the foundation of an unbreakable life. The world has trained many people to chase comfort as if comfort were the same thing as freedom. But too much comfort does not create freedom. It creates dependence. It creates a mind that needs perfect conditions before it can act. It creates a body that panics at effort. It creates a person who waits to feel ready before doing what their future requires. But life does not wait until you feel ready. Life does not wait until your mood is perfect, your energy is high, your confidence is stable, your fear is gone, and your circumstances are clean. Life moves whether you are prepared or not. Pressure comes. Loss comes. Responsibility comes. The difficult conversation comes. The unexpected problem comes. The day arrives when you cannot escape discomfort anymore. And on that day, the question will not be whether you like hardship. The question will be whether you have trained for it. This is why the strongest people do not wait for pain to find them before they learn how to stand. They choose controlled hardship before uncontrolled hardship arrives. They take the cold shower. They go to the gym when their mind is bargaining. They wake up when the alarm rings. They breathe slowly when stress rises. They finish what they said they would finish, even when no one is watching. They do not do these things because they are naturally stronger than everyone else. They do them because they understand that strength is not a personality trait. It is a practice, and every practice is a vote. Every action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you wake up and keep your promise, you vote for the identity of someone who can trust themselves. When you train your body through fatigue, you vote for the identity of someone who does not need comfort to move. When you sit in the cold and breathe instead of panic, you vote for the identity of someone who can remain composed under stress. When you choose focus before distraction, you vote for the identity of someone whose future matters more than their temporary mood. At first, these votes feel small. They almost feel meaningless. A glass of water in the morning, a made bed, 10 minutes of breathing, 30 minutes of movement, one cold shower, one page written, one task completed before the phone touches your hand, one moment where you choose to respond differently instead of repeating the same emotional pattern. But the mind is not changed by grand declarations. The mind is changed by evidence. You do not become disciplined by shouting that you are disciplined. You become disciplined by giving your brain proof again and again that you are the type of person who does what they said they would do. You become mentally tough by giving your body repeated experiences of difficulty that did not destroy you. You become resilient by meeting discomfort in small doses until your system stops interpreting every challenge as a threat. That is the purpose of strategic hardship. It is not reckless suffering. It is not destroying your body to prove a point. It is not chasing pain for attention. It is the intelligent use of difficulty to build a deeper capacity for life. Because there are two kinds of hard. There is the hard that you choose, and there is the hard that chooses you. Training is hard. But being weak in the moment when life demands strength is also hard. Waking up early is hard, but living with the shame of wasted years is also hard. Building a healthy body is hard, but feeling trapped inside a body you cannot rely on is also hard. Facing your emotions is hard, but being ruled by them for the rest of your life is also hard. You do not escape hardship by avoiding discipline. You simply trade one kind of hardship for another. The difference is that chosen hardship builds you, while avoided hardship eventually controls you. When you voluntarily step into discomfort, something changes in the relationship between your mind and your body. The body may still resist. It may still send signals of tension, cold, fatigue, impatience, or fear. But now the mind begins to learn that these signals are not commands. They are sensations. They are information. They are weather passing through the nervous system. And once you realize that a feeling is not an order, your entire life begins to change. You no longer need to obey every impulse. You no longer need to run from every uncomfortable emotion. You no longer need to collapse just because your body is tired, your mind is loud, or the day is difficult. You learn to pause. You learn to breathe. You learn to stay. This is why the breath matters. The breath is one of the simplest ways to remind the body that the mind is still present. When pressure rises, the breath usually becomes shallow. The mind starts moving faster. The emotions become louder. The body prepares for danger, even when the danger is only a difficult task, a conversation, a decision, or a memory from the past. But when you slow the breath down, when you inhale with control, hold with awareness, exhale with patience, and create space before reacting, you begin to interrupt the old pattern. You begin to show your nervous system that stress can exist without panic. You begin to train calm inside pressure, not outside of it. Anyone can feel calm when nothing is happening. The real practice is learning to remain clear while something uncomfortable is happening. That is why cold exposure is such a powerful metaphor. And for some people, a powerful practice. The cold does not negotiate with your preferences. It does not care whether you are motivated. It does not wait for your confidence. It simply arrives as a shock to the body. And in that first moment, every instinct wants to escape. The body tightens. The breath shortens. The mind says, "Get out." But if the practice is safe, controlled, and deliberate, and you stay long enough to breathe with awareness, you discover something important. The cold did not disappear, but your relationship with it changed. The sensation remained intense, but your panic began to soften. The body was under stress, but the mind learned to stay organized. That lesson does not stay in the shower. It follows you into work, into conflict, into disappointment, into uncertainty, into the days when your plan breaks, your energy is low, and your emotions want to take the steering wheel. The cold becomes a classroom. The workout becomes a classroom. The early morning becomes a classroom. The difficult task becomes a classroom. every controlled discomfort becomes a place where you rehearse the person you want to become before life demands that person from you. This is the deeper meaning of daily ritual. A ritual is not just something you do. It is something that shapes the one who does it. It is an agreement between your present self and your future self. It is a structure that protects you from being dragged around by mood, chaos, and impulse. It gives your mind an anchor when the world becomes noisy. Without ritual, the day owns you. With ritual, you begin to own the day. This does not mean your life becomes perfect. It does not mean you wake up every morning full of energy, clarity, and confidence. In fact, the entire point of ritual is that it carries you when motivation is not there. It gives you a path when your feelings are unstable. It removes the need to decide whether you are going to be disciplined today. You already decided. You decided when you built the ritual. You decided when you made the promise. You decided that the first part of your day would not belong to your phone, your fear, your excuses, your old emotional patterns, or the opinions of the outside world. You decided that before the world programs you, you would program yourself, because the first moments of the day matter. When you wake up, your mind is impressionable. The old self is waiting to return. The phone is waiting to remind you of yesterday. The same messages, the same problems, the same identities, the same emotional triggers are waiting to pull you back into the familiar version of yourself. And if you begin the day by surrendering your attention, you begin the day by handing your nervous system back to the past. But if you pause, breathe, move, hydrate, reflect, and set direction before the noise enters, you create a different signal. You tell the body that today is not merely a repetition of yesterday. You tell the mind that the old pattern does not get automatic control. You tell your subconscious that a new identity is being rehearsed, not through fantasy, but through action. This is where true reprogramming begins. Not in empty affirmation, not in pretending to be someone you are not, but in becoming aware of the thoughts you keep thinking, the emotions you keep feeding, the behaviors you keep repeating, and asking the most important question a person can ask. Does this belong in my future? Does this fear belong in my future? Does this laziness belong in my future? Does this excuse belong in my future? Does this addiction to comfort belong in my future? Does this version of me have the strength to carry the life I say I want? Most people try to create a new life while remaining emotionally loyal to the old one. They want a different reality, but they keep practicing the same identity. They want confidence, but they keep rehearsing insecurity. They want freedom, but they keep obeying their feelings. They want growth, but they keep avoiding the friction that growth requires. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But a new life requires a new pattern. A new pattern requires a new ritual. And a new ritual requires the willingness to feel uncomfortable before the evidence appears. This is the part that most people misunderstand. They think change should feel inspiring. Sometimes it does. But often, real change feels awkward, unfamiliar, and even threatening to the old self. When you begin waking earlier, the old self complains. When you begin training harder, the old self resists. When you begin speaking to yourself with discipline instead of pity, the old self feels attacked. When you stop feeding the emotions that kept you attached to your past, the old self feels like it is losing control. And in a way, it is. That is why the beginning of transformation often feels worse before it feels better. You are not failing because it feels difficult. You are feeling the cost of becoming someone new. Every new identity has an entry fee, and the entry fee is discomfort. The person who can focus deeply must pay with distraction denied. The person who can lead themselves must pay with excuses removed. The person who can stay calm under pressure must pay with repeated practice inside pressure. The person who can trust themselves must pay by keeping promises when breaking them would be easier. There is no way around this, but there is a way through it. And the way through is daily. Not someday, not when life calms down, not when motivation returns. Daily. You begin with the body because the body is honest. The body reveals where the mind has been bargaining. Movement exposes excuses. Cold exposes panic. Breath exposes impatience. Stillness exposes chaos. A disciplined routine exposes all the places where you have allowed emotion to override intention. And that exposure is not failure. It is feedback. It shows you where the work is. The goal is not to become a machine. The goal is not to eliminate emotion. The goal is to become the kind of person who can feel emotion without being ruled by it. You can be tired and still move. You can be afraid and still begin. You can feel resistance and still keep your promise. You can feel uncertainty and still take the next small step. That is mental toughness, not loudness, not aggression, not pretending nothing hurts. Mental toughness is the quiet ability to remain aligned with your values while your feelings are trying to pull you elsewhere. It is the ability to say, I hear the discomfort, but I am not taking orders from it. And this is where micro goals become powerful. When the mind is overwhelmed, it wants the entire mountain to disappear before it takes one step. But the disciplined mind learns to shrink the battlefield. It does not need to solve the entire life today. It needs to complete the next honest action. One breath, one rep, one page, one task, one conversation, one decision that proves the old pattern is losing power. When you learn to focus on the next controllable step, you stop drowning in the size of the journey. You begin to build momentum. And momentum is not magic. It is the result of repeated completion. Every completed action sends a signal back to the mind. I can move. I can continue. I can trust myself a little more than I did yesterday. This is how self-belief becomes real. Not because someone told you that you are powerful, but because you have watched yourself do difficult things when no one was clapping. You have seen yourself keep going when it would have been easy to stop. You have seen yourself breathe through stress. You have seen yourself choose the workout, the work, the silence, the focus, the discipline. You have gathered evidence. You have built a case for a new identity. And eventually, the mind begins to believe what the ritual has been proving. I am someone who does not quit easily. I am someone who can handle pressure. I am someone who can choose my response. I am someone who does hard things on purpose. So life does not have to teach me by force. This is the essence of becoming unbreakable. It does not mean life cannot hurt you. It does not mean you will never feel fear, grief, exhaustion, or doubt. It means those things no longer have the final authority over who you become. It means you have built enough inner structure that when chaos arrives, you are not completely at its mercy. Resilience is not built by avoiding storms. It is built by strengthening the part of you that knows how to stand when storms come. and that strength is often built in ordinary places. In the morning when you do not hit snooze. In the cold water when you slow your breath instead of escaping immediately. In the gym when the body wants comfort, but the future requires effort. In the quiet moment before bed when you refuse to replay every failure and instead choose to plant a better command into your mind. In the moment when you notice the old emotion rising and ask, is this helping me or harming me? In the moment when you stop blaming the world long enough to take responsibility for the next action in front of you. These are not dramatic moments, but they are decisive ones. Because your life is not shaped only by the big choices people can see. It is shaped by the private choices repeated so often that they become your character. And character is destiny in slow motion. So build the ritual. Build it simply. Wake up at a time you can respect. Drink water before you drown your mind in noise. Move your body before excuses multiply. Breathe with intention before stress owns your rhythm. Choose one difficult action every day that reminds your nervous system you are stronger than comfort. Set one clear priority and give it your best attention before the world steals your focus. Reflect at night, not with shame, but with honesty. And ask yourself whether today's actions voted for the person you are trying to become. Then do it again tomorrow. And again. And again. Not perfectly, but consistently. Because the goal is not perfection. The goal is proof. Proof that you can begin again. Proof that your feelings are not your master. Proof that the past is not your prison. Proof that discomfort can be survived, studied, and transformed into fuel. Proof that you are not waiting for life to make you strong. You are training strength before life tests it. One day, the hardship you did not choose will arrive. A loss, a failure, a betrayal, a season of uncertainty, a problem that does not care how motivated you feel. And when that day comes, you will meet it with the person your rituals have been building. You will not be untouched, but you will not be empty. You will not be fearless, but you will not be helpless. You will not be comfortable, but you will be prepared. Because every cold morning, every hard workout, every controlled breath, every kept promise, every moment of discipline when comfort was begging for control, all of it was training. You were not just building a routine. You were building a mind that can stay. You were building a body that can endure. You were building an identity that does not collapse the moment life becomes difficult. You were building the quiet strength to look at pressure, pain, uncertainty, and resistance, and say, I have been here before in smaller ways. I know this feeling. I know how to breathe. I know how to take the next step. I know how to continue. That is what it means to become unbreakable. Not to be hard all the time, but to be deeply trained, deeply grounded, deeply committed to the person you are becoming. So do not wait for the perfect day to begin. Begin with the next morning. Begin with the next breath. Begin with the next promise you can keep. Begin with the next uncomfortable action that tells your mind the truth. You are no longer building your life around comfort. You are building your life around strength. And every day you return to the ritual. Every day you choose the harder right over the easier escape. Every day you step into controlled discomfort with purpose instead of resentment. You are quietly engineering a mind that pressure cannot easily break. That is the ritual. That is the path. That is the work. And that is how an ordinary person becomes unbreakable. You will never attract a new financial life with an old financial identity. You cannot keep thinking like scarcity, reacting like scarcity, spending like scarcity, avoiding money like scarcity, and then expect abundance to suddenly appear in your life. Money does not come only to the person who is busy. Money does not come only to the person who is exhausted. Money does not even stay with the person who simply wants it badly. Money stays with the person who has trained the mind to expect it, respect it, manage it, and multiply it. This is not just motivation. This is not entertainment. This is instruction. Because before wealth ever appears in your bank account, it must first become normal inside your nervous system. Before your outer life changes, your inner architecture must change. Before you can hold more money, you must become the kind of person who no longer fears more money. And that is where most people fail. They say they want abundance, but they are still addicted to scarcity. They say they want financial freedom, but they avoid looking at their bank account. They say they want success, but they feel guilty for wanting more. They say they want to be rich, but deep inside, they still believe money is dangerous, selfish, hard, impossible, or only available to other people. So they chase money with fear. They spend money with guilt. They receive money with discomfort. They talk about money with shame. And then they wonder why wealth never feels safe. Listen carefully. You do not have a money problem first. You have a pattern problem. You have a nervous system that has been trained to survive, not expand. You have a brain that has been trained to scan for danger, not opportunity. You have old emotional programs running in the background, deciding what you think is possible, what you think you deserve, and what you think you are allowed to receive. That is why abundance is not just about earning more. Abundance is about becoming someone who can see more, hold more, build more, and receive more without collapsing back into fear. Your brain is running scarcity software. For thousands of years, scarcity helped humans survive. If there was not enough food, not enough shelter, not enough safety, the brain had to protect you. It had to compare. It had to compete. It had to watch every threat. But today, that same old survival system can sabotage your future. When someone else succeeds, the scarcity brain sees it as a threat. When an opportunity appears, the scarcity brain sees risk first. When money enters your life, the scarcity brain asks, "What if I lose it?" When money leaves your life, the scarcity brain says, "See, there is never enough." And slowly, your world becomes smaller. Scarcity makes you grab. Scarcity makes you hide. Scarcity makes you avoid. Scarcity makes you compare. Scarcity makes you resent the success of other people instead of learning from it. But abundance does the opposite. Abundance makes you create. Abundance makes you share. Abundance makes you learn. Abundance makes you see opportunity where fear used to live. Abundance makes you ask, what can I build? What can I improve? What value can I bring? What skill can I master? What door can I open? This is not about pretending. This is not about lying to yourself. This is about updating your mind to match the future you are trying to enter. Because your brain can change, your habits can change, Your emotional reactions can change. Your relationship with money can change. But it will not change by accident. It changes through awareness, repetition, emotion, and action. At any age, you can learn new patterns. At any age, you can unlearn old ones. But as an adult, your brain does not change passively. You cannot just hear a sentence once and become a new person. You cannot just watch a video and expect your whole identity to transform. You must become alert. You must become focused. You must choose the new pattern again and again until the brain understands. This is who we are now. That is neuroplasticity. Your brain forms and strengthens connections through repeated experience. Every time you think a thought, rehearse an identity, take a new action, or respond differently than before, you are giving your brain evidence. You are teaching it what to become. This is why mental rehearsal is powerful. When you begin to think about a new possibility, your brain begins to fire in new sequences, new patterns, and new combinations. When you mentally rehearse who you are becoming, you begin to install new neurological circuits. Your brain stops being only a record of your past. It becomes a map to your future. But most people never use this power. They wake up and rehearse the same life. They rehearse the same stress. They rehearse the same money fear. They rehearse the same complaints. They look at their current results and use those results to decide who they are. They say, "I do not have enough money, so I am not abundant." They say, "I failed before, so I will fail again." They say, "I am bad with money, so I will always be bad with money." And by repeating the old story, they keep building the old brain. But if you want a new financial life, you must stop letting your bank account be the only voice in your identity. Your current bank account is feedback. It is not your destiny. Your current income is information. It is not your identity. Your current habits are evidence of who you have practiced being. They are not a life sentence. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting to feel confident. Stop waiting to feel rich before you start behaving like someone who can build wealth. The brain does not wait for confidence to magically appear. The brain rewires when you act. If you want to become confident, you must begin standing, speaking, choosing, and moving like a confident person before confidence feels natural. If you want to become disciplined, you must act with discipline before discipline becomes automatic. If you want to become financially powerful, you must start making financially powerful decisions before you feel financially powerful. The more you live it, the more your brain believes it. And the more your brain believes it, the more natural it becomes. There are stages to this transformation. First is awareness. You must see the pattern clearly. You must notice how you think about money, how you talk about money, how you react when money comes in, and how you react when money leaves. You must notice whether you avoid money conversations. You must notice whether you compare yourself to people online. You must notice whether you feel shame when you look at your numbers. You must notice whether receiving compliments, gifts, help, support, or payment makes you uncomfortable. Because your ability to receive in one area of life is connected to your ability to receive in another. If you cannot receive praise, you may struggle to receive opportunity. If you cannot receive support, you may struggle to receive wealth. If you cannot receive attention without shrinking, you may struggle to receive success without guilt. Awareness is uncomfortable because it removes the excuse. But awareness is also freedom. Because once you can see the pattern, you are no longer trapped inside it. The second phase is disruption. You must interrupt the old automatic behavior. If you usually avoid your bank account, open it. If you usually complain when a bill arrives, pause and change the meaning. If you usually say, "I am terrible with money," replace it with, "I am learning how to manage money with clarity." If you usually feel jealous when someone succeeds, train yourself to say, "Their success is proof that more is possible." This will feel unnatural at first. That is normal. Your brain prefers the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. Old pathways are easier. Old stories use less energy. Old reactions feel automatic because you have practiced them for years. But your future requires a new pattern, and a new pattern requires friction. The third phase is repetition. You cannot rewire 20 years of scarcity with 20 seconds of positive thinking. You must repeat the new identity. You must repeat the new choice. You must repeat the new emotional state. You must repeat the new behavior until the brain begins to understand that this is not a temporary mood. This is the new standard. For the next 30 days, train your mind. Do not just visualize once. Do not just affirm once. Do not just make one good decision and then return to the old self. Repeat every morning, every night, every day. See the future. Feel the future. Act toward the future. Then take one physical step that proves you are serious. Because visualization without action becomes fantasy. But visualization with action becomes identity. The fourth phase is integration. This is when the new behavior starts to feel natural. This is when the new thought becomes easier to believe. This is when the new financial standard becomes part of who you are. You are no longer forcing yourself to act differently. You are becoming different. And that is the point, not to chase money from fear, but to become someone who creates value, manages resources, sees opportunity, and moves with calm certainty. But before that happens, you must deal with your money blocks. Money blocks are not always obvious. They are not always loud. Sometimes they hide inside avoidance. You avoid money conversations because they bring up shame. You avoid successful people because their success triggers your insecurity. You avoid looking at your numbers because the truth feels heavy. You compare your financial situation to strangers on the internet and then feel behind in life. You see someone your age buying a house, building a business, traveling the world, or earning more than you. And suddenly your brain begins to say, "I am not enough, I am late, I am failing." That shame cycle is dangerous because shame does not create action. Shame creates paralysis, and paralysis keeps you exactly where you are. Another hidden block is the inability to receive. You struggle to receive compliments. You struggle to receive gifts. You struggle to receive support. You struggle to be celebrated. And if you cannot receive emotionally, you may also struggle to receive financially. Because money is not just numbers. Money is relationship. Money is trust. Money is responsibility. Money is stewardship. Money is a mirror of how you treat value. So ask yourself honestly, what is your relationship with money? If money walked into the room as a person, what would you feel? Would you feel fear? Would you feel guilt? Would you feel anger? Would you feel embarrassment? Would you try to impress it? Would you try to avoid it? Would you resent it? Would you beg it to stay? That reaction tells you something. Because many people do not need more money first. They need a healed relationship with money. You can change your relationship with money. You can stop chasing it out of fear and start building it from wisdom. You can stop using it to impress people and start using it to invest in your future. You can stop hiding from your bank account and start owning every number. You can stop saying, "I am bad with money," and start learning like your future depends on it. Because it does. So ask yourself honestly, what is your relationship with money? If money walked into the room as a person, what would you feel? Would you feel fear? Would you feel guilt? Would you feel anger? Would you feel embarrassment? Would you try to impress it? Would you try to avoid it? Would you resent it? Would you beg it to stay? That reaction tells you something. Because many people do not need more money first. They need a healed relationship with money. You can change your relationship with money. You can stop chasing it out of fear and start building it from wisdom. You can stop using it to impress people and start using it to invest in your future. You can stop hiding from your bank account and start owning every number. You can stop saying, "I am bad with money," and start learning like your future depends on it. Because it does. You can rewrite the money stories you were raised on. You can replace guilt with clarity. You can replace shame with strategy. You can replace scarcity with intention. It is not only about how much you have. It is about how you treat what you have. Because how you treat money determines whether it grows, disappears, or controls you. Many of your beliefs about money were formed before you ever understood money. As a child, you heard things. We cannot afford that. Money is hard to make. Rich people are greedy. There is never enough. You have to work yourself to death to survive. And without knowing it, those sentences became instructions. They became emotional programs. They became the invisible ceiling above your life. But now you are not a child anymore. Now you can choose. You can question the beliefs you inherited. You can stop treating old family fear as universal truth. You can decide that money is not evil. Money is a tool. Money is a resource. Money is a form of stored value. Money can build safety. Money can create freedom. Money can support your family. Money can fund your mission. Money can multiply your ability to help. So give up the belief that wanting more makes you bad. Give up the belief that ambition is shameful. Give up the belief that poverty is noble and wealth is corrupt. The truth is simpler. Money in the hands of an unconscious person can create destruction. Money in the hands of a disciplined, grounded, generous person can create impact. So become the person who can be trusted with more. Now train your brain to look for what is right. For every negative thought, give your brain a new task. When it says, "This is impossible," ask, "What part of this is possible?" When it says, "I am behind," ask, "What can I improve today?" When it says, "They are lucky," ask, "What can I learn from them?" When it says, "There is not enough," ask, "What value can I create?" This is how you retrain attention. This is how you teach the brain to scan for opportunity instead of threat. Gratitude is not weakness. Gratitude is training. It trains the mind to find evidence of support, progress, possibility, and abundance. And what the brain looks for, the brain begins to find. So ask yourself, how would an abundant person think? How would an abundant person walk? How would they breathe? How would they speak? How would they treat money? How would they open their banking app? How would they negotiate? How would they work? How would they learn? How would they show up on a hard day? How would they respond when things are slow? How would they respond when money comes in? How would they respond when money goes out? Close your eyes and rehearse that person. See how they move. See how they sit. See how they make decisions. See how they build. See how they stay calm. See how they create value. See how they handle pressure. See how they receive more without fear. This is not pretending. This is rehearsal. And mental rehearsal gives the brain a model. The more clearly you rehearse, the more familiar the new identity becomes. But now, you must make it practical. Get clear on the exact amount you want to earn. Not vaguely, not someday, not more money. Be specific. Per month, per year, per project, per business, per skill. Clarity gives the brain a target. Then create a simple affirmation. I am so grateful that I am now earning $10,000 a month through valuable work, clear thinking, and disciplined action. Use your own number. Use your own goal. But make it clear. Read it in the morning. Read it before bed. Then close your eyes and mentally rehearse. See the money arriving. See the number in your account. See the work you are doing to earn it. See the people being helped by your value. See the systems you are building. See the way your family feels. See the way your body feels when money no longer triggers panic. See yourself calm. See yourself focused. See yourself responsible. See yourself wealthy without losing your soul. And then ask the most important question. What can I do today to make this real? Not next year? Not when you feel ready? Today? What skill can you practice? What offer can you improve? What expense can you remove? What conversation can you stop avoiding? What number can you finally face? What habit can you build? What value can you create? What action can you take? Because the moment you take responsibility for your financial habits, even if you are broke, you begin building wealth. You do not need to wait until you are rich to act responsibly. You can cancel one unnecessary subscription. You can track your spending. You can transfer a small amount to savings. You can learn one financial concept. You can stop pretending you do not care about money. You can stop shaming ambition while secretly envying the results. You can stop avoiding the truth. That is where power begins. People who believe they can influence their future behave differently. They take responsibility. They take action. They learn. They build. They adjust. They do not just manifest. They move. Abundant people treat money differently. They appreciate it. They respect it. They are not weird about it. They learn about it. They are generous from wisdom, not from insecurity. They take calculated risks. They understand that if they want a different life, they must do things they have never done before. And most importantly, they build skill. Because the more skills you have, the less you worry about money. Money follows value. Money follows mastery. Money follows problem solved. Money follows usefulness. Most people enter a side hustle and immediately ask, how much money can I make? But the better question is, how good can I become? Because if you chase money before skill, you will quit when the money is slow. But if you chase mastery, money has a path to follow. Do not chase numbers first. Chase value. Build the skill. Sharpen the skill. Deepen the skill. Use the skill to serve. Use the skill to solve. Use the skill to create. then money becomes the result of who you have become. This is why abundance requires obsession. Not obsession from fear, obsession from devotion. You must be possessed by the future you are building. It must be on your mind, not as pressure, but as excitement. Your body must get a taste of the future so strongly that getting out of bed and making a different choice becomes worth it. And yes, the old voices will appear. They will say, "This is not you." They will say, "You cannot do this." They will say, "Go back to what is familiar." But every time you make a different choice in spite of those voices, the voices lose strength. Different choices create different behaviors. Different behaviors create different results. Different results create a different identity. That is how you change, not in one dramatic moment, but through repeated evidence, through repeated action, through repeated rehearsal, through repeated responsibility, through repeated courage. Until one day, the person you are trying to become is no longer an image in your mind. It is simply who you are. So from this moment forward, stop chasing money like a desperate person. Create the conditions where money can multiply. Become clear. Become useful. Become disciplined. Become valuable. Become calm. Become trustworthy with resources. Let money support your mission, not define your worth. Let wealth expand your freedom, not inflate your ego. Let abundance move through you without fear, guilt, or grasping. You are allowed to earn while staying aligned. You are allowed to receive while staying grounded. You are allowed to be wealthy and deeply good. The more resourced you are, the greater your impact can become. The more stable you are, the larger you can grow. You do not build from depletion anymore. You build from stability. You do not give from fatigue anymore. You give from fullness. You do not live from survival anymore. You operate from overflow. Wealth is not something you chase. It is something you learn how to hold. It is safe to have more. It is safe to receive more. It is safe to become more. Train your brain. Rewrite the story. Rehearse the future. Take the action. Build the skill. Respect the money. And become the person abundance can finally stay with. I am ready. I am resourced. I am wealthy. This is why you are not growing. You say you want more, but your schedule says otherwise. You say you want a new life, but your habits are still protecting the old one. You say you are ready to change, but every single day, you keep choosing the same comfort, the same distractions, the same excuses, the same familiar version of yourself. You are not stuck because opportunity is missing. You are stuck because a part of you is still loyal to the person you used to be. The scroll, the delay, the "I'll start Monday," the empty promises you make to yourself when nobody is watching. That is not rest. That is retreat. And the longer you keep retreating, the more your future self becomes a stranger. Growth does not feel like growth while it is happening. Growth feels like showing up when you are tired. Growth feels like choosing the harder path when nobody claps for you. Growth feels like walking away from the version of yourself that once helped you survive, but now keeps you small. Because what saves you at one stage of life can begin to suffocate you at another. There comes a moment when the identity you built to protect yourself becomes the prison that keeps you from becoming more. The old you had a purpose. Maybe that version of you helped you survive pain. Maybe it helped you avoid rejection. Maybe it helped you stay safe when life felt unstable. But survival is not the same as living. And there comes a point where the self you created in response to life begins to stand between you and life itself. You keep saying, "This is just who I am." But what if that sentence is not truth? What if it is a cage? What if the identity you keep defending is only an old story your nervous system learned because it wanted to keep you safe? Life is not interested in keeping you the same. Life is interested in movement, in expansion, in the breaking open of forms that have become too small. And that is why the old version of you feels tight now. That is why certain habits no longer feel right. That is why things that used to excite you feel empty. That is why certain people, places, routines, and cycles no longer fit your spirit. You are not falling apart. The old you is expiring. The version of you that tolerated less is expiring. The version of you that accepted breadcrumbs is expiring. The version of you that settled for comfort instead of purpose is expiring. Your spirit has outgrown who you used to be. And growth often feels like irritation. It feels like discomfort. It feels like confusion. It feels like, why can't I go back to the things that used to make me feel safe? Because you are too big for that life now. You are being pushed into expansion, but expansion always requires loss. There comes a point in every transformation where the old version of you starts to fall away. And it is not always gentle. It can feel uncomfortable. It can feel confusing. It can feel like grief. Because you are mourning a person you once were while becoming someone you have never been. The things you used to enjoy stop feeling the same. The people you once connected with start to drift. The routines that once gave you comfort now feel like chains. And even though a part of you knows it is right, another part of you still wants to hold on. That is because every rebirth requires surrender. You cannot step into your next chapter while still clutching the pages of the last one. You cannot become the person you are praying to become while emotionally married to the person you used to be. At some point, you must divorce your past version. Not hate it, not shame it, not pretend it never existed, but release it. Thank it for protecting you. Then walk away. Because if you do not let the old self die, something new in you will remain unborn. And yes, it will feel strange. You may feel sad for no clear reason. You may feel nostalgic for a life you know was not even good for you. You may feel pulled back into old patterns, old emotions, old ways of coping. That does not mean you are failing. It means the old identity is losing its grip. You are purging the patterns, the behaviors, and the limitations that used to define you. You are no longer available for the same life. And the more you are willing to let go, the farther you are going to go. The more weight you drop, the lighter you become. The more space you create, the more room life has to bring something new. But if you keep dragging the same old beliefs, the same old fears, the same old emotional stories into every new season, nothing truly new can enter. You cannot receive a new identity with hands full of the old one. So let go. Let go of the story that you are not ready. Let go of the story that you are too damaged. Let go of the story that your past has the final word. Let go of the personality that was built out of fear. Let go of the emotional addiction to who you have always been. Because your brain will try to stop you. Your brain does not care about your success. Your brain cares about your survival. And every time you try to achieve something you have never achieved before, you must do something you have never done before. That means you must leave the comfort zone. And to the brain, anything outside the comfort zone can feel like a threat. That is why you hesitate. That is why you feel anxious when you try to change. That is why you start doubting yourself right before progress begins. That is why the voice in your mind says, "This is not you. You failed last time. You are not that kind of person. Start tomorrow." That voice is not wisdom. That voice is familiarity. Every time you try to turn your life around, your brain fights to pull you back to the old set point, the old habits, the old mood, the old identity, the old emotional home. And this is why change feels worse before it feels better. People think they are afraid of success. Most of the time, they are not. They are afraid of change. Because change means something in your life has to become unstable before it becomes stronger. If you leave an old relationship, you may feel lonely before you feel free. If you build a new career, you may feel uncertain before you feel powerful. If you break an old habit, you may feel uncomfortable before you feel disciplined. This is the price of becoming new. Your life may feel worse first, not because you are going backward, but because the old structure is collapsing. And the mind hates collapse. The mind wants to be free of pain, free of uncertainty, free of change. But change is law. No amount of pretending will alter that reality. So stop asking for growth without discomfort. Stop asking for transformation without loss. Stop asking for a new life while demanding that nothing old be disturbed. The new you is not built in comfort. The new you is built in the unknown. But here is the deeper truth. You do not have a motivation problem. You do not have a discipline problem. You do not have a productivity problem. At the root, you have a self-image problem. You cannot outperform your self-image. Your self-image sets the boundaries of your life, your income, your relationships, your body, your confidence, your discipline, your ability to speak, your ability to lead, your ability to receive more. Before you can do something new, you must become someone new. Because inside your mind, there is an image of who you believe you are. You see one version of yourself in the mirror, but there is another image inside. And that inner image controls how you move through life. If your inner image is weak, you will shrink. If your inner image says you are unworthy, you will reject opportunities that require worthiness. If your inner image says you always fail, you will sabotage success when it gets too close. If your inner image says you are not confident, you will avoid eye contact, avoid hard conversations, avoid the rooms where your next level exists. But when your self-image changes, your life begins to change. Your posture changes, your voice changes, your standards change, your choices change. You stop moving like someone waiting for permission. You start moving like someone who belongs. Because identity is not just in your thoughts. Identity lives in your nervous system. You can only express the version of yourself that your body feels safe to express. This is why transformation is not just mental. You can say, "I am confident." But if your nervous system still feels unsafe being seen, you will hide. You can say, "I deserve more." But if your body still believes receiving more is dangerous, you will push it away. You can say, "I am different now." But if your inner world still feels attached to survival, you will keep repeating the survival self. Most people do not realize that healing requires dropping the identity of the survival self. And that is not always easy. Because the survival self is familiar. It knows how to please people. It knows how to avoid risk. It knows how to stay small enough to avoid judgment. It knows how to hide behind excuses. It knows how to keep you safe. But safe is not always free. Sometimes safe is just another word for trapped. To become someone new, you must deconstruct the entire infrastructure of how you see yourself. That is why transformation can feel like an identity crisis. You feel better and worse at the same time. You feel excited and afraid at the same time. You feel like you are growing, but also like you are losing yourself. That is not failure. That is rebuilding. Your brain is a record of the past. Your body is a record of familiar emotions. If you have lived for years in guilt, sadness, anger, fear, shame, resentment, or self-doubt, your body begins to treat those emotions like home. And even when they hurt you, they feel familiar. So when you try to become peaceful, your body resists. When you try to become disciplined, your body resists. When you try to become confident, your body resists. Not because the new identity is wrong, but because the old identity has been rehearsed for too long. Same thoughts lead to same choices. Same choices lead to same behaviors. Same behaviors create same experiences. Same experiences produce same emotions. And those same emotions influence the same thoughts again. That is the loop. That is how a personality becomes a prison. That is how yesterday becomes tomorrow. That is how people live the same year 10 times and call it life. So if you want a new personal reality, you must change the personality that created the current one. You must become conscious of the unconscious pattern. You must catch the thought before it becomes a choice. Catch the excuse before it becomes behavior. Catch the emotion before it becomes identity. When you say, I am tired. When you say, I am not good enough. When you say, it is someone else's fault. When you say, I will never change. Stop. That is the old self trying to breathe through you. That is old software running in the background. Do not obey it. Observe it. Interrupt it. Replace it. Stop telling the story of your past. Start telling the story of your future. Because if you're not defined by a vision of the future, you will be left with memories of the past. Most people wake up and immediately remember their problems. And those problems are memories. They are tied to people, places, failures, regrets, and old emotions. So the moment they wake up, their brain is already in the past. Their body is already in the past. Their energy is already in the past. And if your thoughts have anything to do with your destiny, then thinking from the past creates more of the past. You do not need to keep living as the person who was hurt. You do not need to keep living as the person who failed. You do not need to keep living as the person who was rejected. You do not need to keep living as the person who was not chosen. That was an experience. It does not have to become your identity. A belief is just a thought repeated long enough and charged with emotion. If you repeat, I am not worthy, your mind will look for proof. If you repeat, I always fail, your mind will look for proof. If you repeat, nothing works for me, your mind will look for proof. Your beliefs become the lens through which you see reality. Same world, different lens, different life. So stop asking only, is this belief true? Ask, does this belief serve the life I am building? Does this belief move me toward the person I want to become? Or does it keep me loyal to my past? Because who you believe you are determines what your brain allows you to dream. Your self-concept does not just influence your goals. It determines what future your mind can even imagine. And what you cannot imagine, you cannot create. Your identity predicts your habits better than your goals do. Your brain works to keep you consistent with who you think you are. So when your goal is bigger than your identity, you will sabotage it. You will delay. You will avoid. You will quit. Not because you are lazy, but because your identity has not caught up to your desire. You do not fall back into old habits because you are weak. You fall back because you are still operating as the same version of yourself. You are trying to build a new life with an old self-concept. That will never last. No amount of motivation can overpower identity forever. No amount of discipline can fight the current forever. Eventually, your identity pulls you back to what feels normal. So the answer is not to try harder. The answer is to become someone new. You are not who you think you are. Your personality, your habits, your limits, none of it is fixed. They are stories your brain keeps retelling because no one ever interrupted the loop. But you can interrupt it. You can rewire your identity. Not in theory, in structure. Your brain is neuroplastic. It reshapes itself when you think new thoughts, take new actions, and imagine a new future. You are not stuck. You are rehearsing the old you on autopilot. Every belief you have about yourself is a well-worn pathway. I am shy. I am bad with money. I cannot focus. I always quit. I am not disciplined. Those are not permanent truths. They are practiced patterns. And what has been practiced can be retrained. First, define the old identity clearly. What thoughts run through your mind every day? What negative traits have you assigned to yourself? What do you keep saying about yourself when nobody hears you? I am not confident. I am bad with money. I do not deserve love. I cannot lead. I never finish. Write it down. Look at it. Make the old identity visible. You cannot rewrite what you refuse to see. Then define the new self-image with surgical clarity. Not vague, not, I want to be better. Specific. How does the new you walk? How does the new you talk? How does the new you enter a room? How does the new you handle money? How does the new you respond under pressure? How does the new you keep promises? How does the new you speak when the conversation is difficult? Your mind needs a destination. A GPS cannot guide you if it does not know where you are going. Then act as if. Every time life gives you an opportunity to return to the old self, choose the new one. When you want to avoid the conversation, speak. When you want to ignore the bank account, look. When you want to skip the workout, show up. When you want to hide, stand tall. When you want to react emotionally, remain calm. Not because it feels natural, but because you are training it to become natural. Then collect evidence. Every time you do something that violates the old self-image, write it down. Every time you prove the old story wrong, write it down. Every time you show up, follow through. Speak clearly, stay calm, choose discipline, keep a promise. Write it down. Your mind needs proof. You cannot build a new self-image out of fantasy. You build it out of evidence. Small evidence, tiny evidence, daily evidence. And over time, your brain stops arguing. Your subconscious begins to accept the new identity. Your new self-image becomes believable. Then it becomes familiar. Then it becomes automatic. One of the most life-changing things you can understand about your brain is this. Your brain is always listening to what you repeatedly do. If you repeatedly hesitate, your brain wires hesitation. If you repeatedly break promises to yourself, your brain wires self-doubt. But if you repeatedly show up, your brain wires discipline. If you repeatedly follow through, your brain wires confidence. If you repeatedly speak with conviction, your brain wires courage. You do not become who you dream about. You become who you practice being. Repetition rewires identity. The brain does not care what you claim. It watches what you repeat. Habits become identity because neurons that fire together wire together. Daily behavior matters more than motivation. Consistency programs self-concept. You are not who you declare. You are who you repeat. Every repeated action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Go to the gym enough, and you become someone who trains. Read enough, and you become someone who studies. Keep showing up, and you become someone who finishes. Speak courageously enough, and you become someone who no longer hides. So do not wait to feel like the new person. Act like the new person until the feeling catches up. And do not rely on willpower. Willpower runs out. Build a system. Design your environment so discipline becomes easier than weakness. Decide the night before. Put the phone away. Put the gym bag by the door. Make the hard thing the first thing. Remove the option to negotiate with yourself. Attach new habits to routine that already exist. Track your streaks. Protect your mornings. Let boredom win. Forgive bad days quickly. One missed workout does not erase 30. One bad day does not collapse the system. Disciplined people do not spiral from one slip. They reset fast. Because identity is not built by perfection. It is built by returning. Look at your room. Look at your clothes. Look at your food. Look at your routine. Look at your mornings. Look at the content you consume. Everything around you tells a story. Your space mirrors your standards. Your habits mirror what you tolerate. Your environment quietly tells your nervous system who you are. So start editing. If it does not reflect the person you are becoming, remove it. If it feeds the old identity, cut it. If it keeps you weak, distance yourself. If it strengthens the new self, repeat it. And before you sleep, rehearse the new identity. Close your eyes and see the version of yourself who has already become what you are building. Notice how that person stands, how they breathe, how they think, how they speak, how they handle pressure, how they walk into a room. Step into that version. Feel the confidence. Hear the inner voice say, "This is who I am now." Because your imagination can work against you, or it can work for you. If you can imagine failure and create anxiety in your body, you can imagine your future and create alignment in your body. Rehearse the new self before sleep. Wake up and prove it through action, again and again. Until one day, the old you no longer feels like home. God, life, destiny, whatever word you use, is asking you to stop being attached to who you have always been. Stop living in the past. Stop rehearsing old decisions. Stop punishing yourself for who you were when you did not know what you know now. That person was part of your story, but that person is not your final form. It is time to move forward. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. It is time to become the person who is willing to change. The person who is ready to drop the bad habits. The person who chooses discipline. The person who remains consistent. The person who no longer looks back for permission. Never look desperate. Never react emotionally. Remain calm even when life gets hard. Accept that there will be seasons where you must suffer, stretch, and grow in silence. Every great transformation requires that. Every stronger version of you will demand a weaker version be left behind. So divorce your past version. Do not keep sleeping beside old fears. Do not keep defending old excuses. Do not keep carrying the identity that was only meant to get you through one chapter. You are allowed to become new. You are allowed to outgrow your story. You are allowed to stop being loyal to the person pain created. The old you was survival. The new you is purpose. And from this moment forward, your job is simple. Think like the new you. Move like the new you. Choose like the new you. Repeat it until your brain believes it. Repeat it until your body feels safe in it. Repeat it until success no longer feels like a goal. Repeat it until it becomes your nature. This is not just self-improvement. This is self-directed evolution. The past built you, but it does not own you. Now stand up. Walk away from the old image and become who you were always meant to be. When no one wakes you in the morning, when no one waits for you at night, when every choice is yours alone, what do you call it? Freedom or loneliness? It is never that simple. Because sometimes the thing you call loneliness is actually the first taste of freedom. And sometimes the thing you call freedom feels terrifying because no one is there to carry the blame. No one is there to tell you what to do. No one is there to rescue you from your own decisions. No one is there to hide behind. And that is why freedom feels heavy. To be free is to be responsible without excuses. It is to stand exposed and unguarded, without the cloak of pride, without the armor of approval, without the comfort of blaming the world. To be free is to claim your destiny as your own. It is to accept that perfection may never come, but wholeness is still possible. You were born alone. You will die alone. And somewhere in between, you will spend your life trying to convince yourself that you are not alone. Through love, through friendship, through success, through achievement, you create moments where the distance disappears. But deep down, there is a silence inside every human being that no one else can fully enter. And that silence scares people. That is why most people run from being alone. They fill every empty space with noise. They scroll, they talk, they chase attention, they chase relationships, they chase applause. They chase anything that keeps them from hearing the truth inside their own mind. But loneliness is not always a sign that something is wrong with your life. Sometimes loneliness is a sign that you are in desperate need of yourself. The worst loneliness is not having no one around you. The worst loneliness is not being comfortable with yourself. Because you can be surrounded by people and still feel invisible. You can sit in a room full of laughter and still feel like you are watching life through a window you cannot open. You can have messages, followers, conversations, and attention, and still feel a strange emptiness because none of it reaches the place inside you that is waiting to be known. For a long time, you may think loneliness is something you have to fix, something you have to outrun, something you have to cover up with people, noise, and distraction. But what if loneliness is not the enemy? What if loneliness is a doorway? What if the ache you feel is not proof that you are weak, but proof that your inner life is larger than the rooms you are standing in? There is a solitude at the core of being human. No matter how close you get to someone, no matter how deeply you love, no matter how deeply you are loved, there is always a space inside you that only you can enter. And if you are someone who feels deeply, someone who carries questions instead of easy answers. That space feels louder. You feel alone even in crowds. But that does not mean you are broken. It means you have stepped into something real. You are beginning to understand that most of what people call connection is only surface-level performance. Real connection is rare. Real connection happens when two people meet in depth, when someone recognizes the silence in you and does not try to fill it, when someone sees your inner world and does not ask you to shrink it. But until that kind of connection arrives, you must not abandon yourself. Because many people do not suffer because they are alone. They suffer because they betrayed themselves just to belong. They became smaller to be accepted. They became quieter to avoid rejection. They became agreeable to keep people close. They traded authenticity for approval. They flattened their depth to survive shallow expectations. And then they wondered why they still felt empty. Loneliness is painful, but abandoning yourself is worse. Because no love from the outside can replace the love you refuse to give yourself. You can search throughout the entire universe for someone more deserving of your love and affection than yourself. But that person will not be found. You yourself, as much as anybody in this world, deserve your own love, your own patience, your own respect, your own forgiveness. If you are not good at loving yourself, you will have a difficult time loving anyone else, because you will secretly resent the time and energy you give to others that you are not even giving to yourself. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. So the question is not only, why am I alone? The deeper question is, what part of myself have I been avoiding? Because silence does not create your pain. Silence reveals it. Isolation does not create your weakness. Isolation exposes it. The void does not destroy you. It strips away every distraction until you finally see what has been controlling you. And this is where most people panic. They think the void means their life is falling apart. But the void is not the end of your life. The void is the space between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the uncomfortable middle ground where your old identity is dying, but your new identity has not fully formed yet. You are no longer who you used to be, but you are not yet stable in who you are becoming. And that is why it feels confusing. You feel foggy. You feel uncertain. You feel detached from the old version of yourself, but not fully grounded in the new one. The habits that used to comfort you no longer work. The people who used to distract you no longer satisfy you. The old conversations feel empty. The old routines feel strange. The old identity feels too small. But the new version of you still feels unfamiliar. This is the void. And if you do not understand it, you will think something is wrong. You will think you are lost. You will think you made a mistake. You will think you should go back. But what is really happening is that your entire system is recalibrating. Your mind is reorganizing. Your nervous system is adjusting. Your subconscious is losing its attachment to the old programs that once kept you safe, small, and predictable. Imagine leaving the country where you were born. You know its streets. You know its language. You know its habits. You know how to survive there. But then one day, you realize you cannot grow there anymore. So you leave. You enter a new country. At first, everything feels strange. The language is different. The rhythm is different. The rules are different. You do not move with confidence yet. You do not feel powerful yet. You feel awkward, uncertain, unstable. But that does not mean you made the wrong decision. It means you are learning how to live in a new identity. That is what happens when you change. The old self was familiar. The new self is still becoming home. And in that transition, resistance will rise. The more important something is to your soul's growth, the stronger the resistance will be. The thing you most need to do will often be the thing you are most afraid of. The project you should begin. The habit you should build. The truth you should face. The discipline you should commit to. The life you should create. It will not always feel inspiring. Sometimes it will punch you in the face. Because resistance knows that if you cross that threshold, you will no longer be the same person. Resistance will make you procrastinate. It will make you doubt yourself. It will make you seek distraction. It will make you crave comfort. It will make you question your purpose. It will make you miss the old chains, because at least the old chains were familiar. But once you have tasted freedom, you must fight to keep from slipping back into chains. And the weight of those chains is always heavier than the burden of freedom. Weak people run back to what is familiar. Strong people learn how to stand in the unknown. Because a person's true power is not in wealth, not in titles, not in the obedience of others, not in being seen, not in being praised, not in being needed. A person's true power is in mastery over the self. Do not waste your life fighting what you cannot control. The rain will fall, the wind will blow, people will betray you, plans will collapse, loneliness will visit you, silence will test you. But none of these things have power over you unless you give them access to your mind. Your mind is the fortress. Guard it well, and nothing can truly break you. Adversity does not destroy a person. It reveals them. Pain reveals what you depend on. Loss reveals what you worship. Failure reveals what you believe about yourself. Loneliness reveals whether you have built a home inside your own soul. That is why suffering is not always bad. Pain can purify you. Failure can prepare you. Loss can sharpen you. Loneliness can return you to yourself. Everything that hurts you can strengthen you if you stop using pain as proof that you are powerless. You alone decide how you respond. Those who blame the world remain prisoners of fate. But those who take responsibility become unstoppable. So if you want to be mentally strong, you have to tell your brain what you want. You cannot leave your mind without direction. A mind without direction will return to old programming. A mind without discipline will obey old fear. A mind without purpose will search for comfort, approval, and distraction. So you must ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to become? What kind of life am I building? What do I want in my relationships? What do I want in my work? What do I want for my body, my mind, my spirit, my future? Write it down. Make it clear. Because if you do not tell your mind what you want, your old programming will tell you what to repeat. Every day, ask yourself, is my behavior getting me what I want? Not my intention, not my dream, not my fantasy. My behavior. Is the way I live today building the person I claim I want to become? Because transformation is not created by desire. Transformation is created by repeated alignment. Your subconscious is always listening. When you wake up and say, I do not want to get out of bed, your subconscious listens. When you say, I am tired, I am lost, I am not enough, I always fail, I cannot change, your subconscious listens. Anything you say after the words I am becomes a command. You are not only describing your present, you are programming your future. The conscious mind is creative. The subconscious mind is programmed. The conscious mind dreams. The subconscious mind repeats. The conscious mind says, I want a new life. But the subconscious mind says, this is what we know. This is what feels safe. This is what we have always done. And most people lose because they try to change their lives only with willpower, while their subconscious is still running the old identity. You cannot build a new life with an old self-image. You cannot become free while secretly believing you are powerless. You cannot become disciplined while your subconscious still identifies with chaos. You cannot become unstoppable while your inner script says you are broken. That is why the void matters. The void is where the old script becomes visible. The void is where you see the habits, beliefs, fears, and emotional addictions that have been quietly controlling your life. And when you see them, you can begin to rewrite them. You reprogram the subconscious through repetition, not once, not when you feel inspired, not only when life is easy. Repetition, again and again. You repeat the identity until it becomes familiar. You repeat the discipline until it becomes natural. You repeat the truth until it becomes stronger than the old lie. If you want to become calm, practice calm. If you want to become focused, practice focus. If you want to become confident, practice confidence. If you want to become powerful, practice self-control when no one is watching. You do not become a new person by thinking about change. You become a new person by behaving like the new person until your subconscious no longer recognizes the old one as home. This is why solitude is powerful. Solitude is not empty. Solitude is a laboratory. It is the place where you study yourself. Most people never create the time or space to have a real conversation with themselves. They do not know their tendencies. They do not know their habits. They do not know their weaknesses. They do not know their triggers. They do not know what they are running from. They do not know what they actually want. They only know how to react. But in solitude, you begin to see. You see the part of you that craves validation. You see the part of you that performs for approval. You see the part of you that fears being forgotten. You see the part of you that wants to be rescued. You see the part of you that still needs applause before it believes the work matters. And once you see it, you can stop obeying it. Because growth does not require an audience. There are moments in life when you feel like you are walking alone on a fog-covered path. No one sees you. No one is cheering. No one tells you that you are doing the right thing. There is only you, your breath, and the road ahead. And in that silence, a different kind of strength begins to form. When no one says, I believe in you, you must become the first person to say it to yourself. When no one pushes you, you must become your own force. When no one recognizes your effort, you must keep walking anyway. That is maturity. Immature people stop when there is no applause. Mature people continue because they know exactly why they are walking, even if no one else understands. True strength is not built in crowded rooms. It is forged in the hours no one sees. It is built in quiet mornings, in private decisions, in repeated promises kept to yourself. In the moments when no one would know if you quit, but you continue anyway. Discipline in solitude is like tending a small flame in the night. No one sees the flame. No one praises you for protecting it. But if you neglect it, the darkness will swallow you. If you keep it alive, slowly, it becomes the light that guides your entire life. This is like the roots of a tree. When people admire a strong tree, they look at the branches, the leaves, the height. But what keeps the tree standing is hidden beneath the ground. The roots grow in darkness, slowly, silently, without applause. And so do you. Your strength is not built on the surface. It is built in the private depths where you choose to continue when no one is watching. Confidence no longer comes from praise. It comes from evidence. Evidence that you stayed with yourself. Evidence that you kept your word. Evidence that you did not abandon your vision just because no one clapped for it. This is why disappearing can be powerful. If you truly want to change your life, you may not need to be seen more. You may need to disappear. Not forever. Not out of fear. Not because you hate people. But because the strongest transformations do not happen under the spotlight. They happen in silence. When no one is watching. When no one is validating. When no one is interrupting. When no one is pulling you back into the old role. The world tells you to post, to prove, to perform, to explain, to show everyone what you are doing. But sometimes the strongest version of you is created away from the noise. Sometimes you need to step back so you can finally hear your own voice again. Because the more you chase the crowd, the further you drift from yourself. The more you chase applause, the less you hear your purpose. The more you try to be understood by everyone, the less you understand yourself. Disappearing is not running away. It is reclaiming your focus. It is cutting off the endless chatter long enough to ask, who am I becoming? What am I really building? Am I living for their approval or for my own destiny? You do not owe the world constant updates. You do not have to announce every move. You do not have to explain your transformation to people who are committed to misunderstanding your silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. And one of the first disciplines you must master when you choose to rebuild yourself is the discipline of your words. Words are energy. Every time you speak about your dreams too early, your energy either builds momentum or leaks away. How many times have you told someone, I am going to start this. I am going to change. I am going to build something. I am going to become different. And for a moment, it felt good. Someone nodded. Someone praised you. Someone said, that is amazing. And your brain received the reward before you did the work. That is the danger. You felt accomplished without accomplishing anything. You traded real progress for the illusion of progress. That is why silence becomes your shield. Protect the flame. Do not expose every dream to the wind. Build first. Speak later. Let your results become louder than your words. Because when you are rebuilding yourself in the void, you cannot afford to leak energy into people who only want updates, entertainment, or access. You need your energy for the work of reprogramming your mind, the work of mastering your emotions, the work of creating new habits, the work of becoming someone your future can depend on. And to do that, you must stop fighting to be seen. You must begin fighting for what is real. When people admire a strong tree, they look at the branches, the leaves, the height. But what keeps the tree standing is hidden beneath the ground. The roots grow in darkness, slowly, silently, without applause. And so do you. Your strength is not built on the surface. It is built in the private depths where you choose to continue when no one is watching. Confidence no longer comes from praise. It comes from evidence. evidence that you stayed with yourself. Evidence that you kept your word. Evidence that you did not abandon your vision just because no one clapped for it. This is why disappearing can be powerful. If you truly want to change your life, you may not need to be seen more. You may need to disappear. Not forever. Not out of fear. Not because you hate people. But because the strongest transformations do not happen under the spotlight. They happen in silence. When no one is watching. When no one is validating. When no one is interrupting. When no one is pulling you back into the old role. The world tells you to post, to prove, to perform, to explain, to show everyone what you are doing. But sometimes the strongest version of you is created away from the noise. Sometimes you need to step back so you can finally hear your own voice again. Because the more you chase the crowd, the further you drift from yourself. The more you chase applause, the less you hear your purpose. The more you try to be understood by everyone, the less you understand yourself. Disappearing is not running away. It is reclaiming your focus. It is cutting off the endless chatter long enough to ask, who am I becoming? What am I really building? Am I living for their approval or for my own destiny? You do not owe the world constant updates. You do not have to announce every move. You do not have to explain your transformation to people who are committed to misunderstanding your silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. And one of the first disciplines you must master when you choose to rebuild yourself is the discipline of your words. Words are energy. Every time you speak about your dreams too early, your energy either builds momentum or leaks away. How many times have you told someone, I am going to start this. I am going to change. I am going to build something. I am going to become different. And for a moment, it felt good. Someone nodded. Someone praised you. Someone said, that is amazing. And your brain received the reward before you did the work. That is the danger. You felt accomplished without accomplishing anything. You traded real progress for the illusion of progress. That is why silence becomes your shield. Protect the flame. Do not expose every dream to the wind. Build first. Speak later. Let your results become louder than your words. Because when you are rebuilding yourself in the void, you cannot afford to leak energy into people who only want updates, entertainment, or access. You need your energy for the work. The work of reprogramming your mind. The work of mastering your emotions. The work of creating new habits. The work of becoming someone your future can depend on. And to do that, you must stop fighting to be seen. You must begin fighting for what is real. There is a part of you that wants to be praised, validated, approved, and recognized. That part is not evil. It is just afraid. It is the part of you that learned that being accepted meant being safe. So when someone ignores you, you feel small. When someone criticizes you, you feel attacked. When someone does not understand you, you feel invisible. But if you keep living for the eyes of others, you will never belong to yourself. The ego wants to be defended. The self wants to be true. The ego wants applause. The self wants alignment. The ego asks, how do I look? The self asks, what is real? And the moment you stop fighting to protect your image, you begin to protect your destiny. That is freedom, not the freedom to do anything. The freedom to stop being controlled by the need to be seen. The freedom to walk alone without feeling worthless. The freedom to build in silence without needing permission. The freedom to choose yourself without waiting for someone else to choose you first. because being alone is not always punishment. Sometimes being alone is power. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers. Loneliness is needing others to feel whole. Solitude is choosing yourself because you already are. You are not lonely. You are free from noise, free from performance, free from pretending, free from needing the wrong people to confirm the right path. And when you understand this, the void changes. It no longer feels like abandonment. It becomes training. It becomes a place where your old identity loses control and your new self begins to breathe. In the void, you stop asking, "Why is no one here?" And you begin asking, "What am I being forced to become?" You stop asking, "Who left me?" And you begin asking, "What part of myself is finally returning?" You stop asking, "Why am I lonely?" And you begin asking, "How can I use this silence to rebuild my mind?" Because loneliness is not here to destroy you. It is here to remove every false voice until the only voice left is your own. And once you hear that voice, you must train it. You must discipline it. You must make it stronger than fear, stronger than memory, stronger than the need for approval, stronger than the old programs that keep pulling you backward. Every morning, remind yourself, I am not here to repeat the past. I am not here to live from old wounds. I am not here to beg for validation. I am not here to become smaller so other people can feel comfortable. I am here to build a mind that cannot be broken. I am here to build a life that is rooted in purpose. I am here to turn silence into power. I am here to become someone I can trust. And every night, ask yourself, did I honor the person I am becoming? Did I protect my focus? Did I keep my word? Did I move closer to my future, or did I return to my old chains? This is how you reprogram the void. Not with fantasy, not with empty motivation, not with waiting, but with repeated identity, repeated discipline, repeated silence, repeated self-respect, repeated action. Until one day, the solitude that once felt like punishment begins to feel like peace. The silence that once felt empty begins to feel sacred. The loneliness that once felt like a wound begins to feel like space. Space to think, space to heal, space to build, space to become. And you realize something powerful. You were never alone because you were unlovable. You were alone because you had not yet been met deeply enough. And before the world could meet you deeply, you had to meet yourself. You had to stand before the mirror without turning away. You had to see the fear, the pain, the hunger for approval, the old identity, the resistance, the wounds, the silence. And instead of running, you stayed. That is power. Not loud power, not arrogant power, not the power that needs witnesses. Real power, the power of a person who can sit with themselves and not collapse. The power of a person who can walk alone and not lose direction. The power of a person who can feel pain and still choose purpose. The power of a person who can enter the void and come out with a new mind. So do not fear this season. Do not fear the silence. Do not fear being unseen. Do not fear the empty space between who you were and who you are becoming. This is where the work happens. This is where the old self dies. This is where the new self is installed. This is where loneliness becomes discipline. This is where discipline becomes identity. This is where identity becomes destiny. And one day, you will look back at the season when you thought you were abandoned, and you will realize you were actually being returned to yourself. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. You were not being forgotten. You are being forged. You are not losing your life. You are losing the version of yourself that could no longer carry your future. And when you finally make peace with loneliness, you stop needing the world to rescue you from yourself. You stop begging for noise. You stop chasing shallow connection. You stop fearing silence. Because now you know, the void is not empty. The void is where power is born. And once you learn how to stand there, once you learn how to breathe there, once you learn how to build there, you will never be the same again. You may not feel completely healed from loneliness, but you can become at peace with it. And once you are at peace with it, you are never truly alone again.